Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. It is 11 a.m. Pacific time on Mercury's Day, Miércoles, Wednesday, and therefore time for Starry Telling Hour here at the School of Earth Astrology with Gemini Brett. I'm glad so many of you can join me live. I'd love to know where on Earth you are beaming in from. I would love to beam out some big heart to the Los Angeles area, which we know is currently ablaze. May people find safety and comfort and nurturing, and also to the many places that are ablaze, like Gaza and Ukraine. Send big love to these places where there's so much concentrated, maybe we could say Mars, perhaps, at this time. And I wanted to share about Mars overload today here on Starry Telling Hour today, and to speak about the coming Mars occultation, which will happen next week, January 13th. For those of us who will be able to see the moon hide Mars from our view here in the United States, I think it will be January 14th on the calendar. In other places where this Martian occultation will be visible, and that is in Africa. So let me actually start, because I said that, with showing you a map of Mars occultation zones here on Earth for next Monday, Moon Day, January 13th, 2024, for those of us who will experience Mars eating the moon from the United States view. And again, I believe it will be January 14th, as far as the weird calendar clock time most of us are using here in Africa, Northern Africa, where this occultation will also be visible. So just like occultations of the sun by the moon, right, we call solar eclipse, you can't see that from everywhere on Earth, right? The sun has to be in the sky, in other words, daytime, right? But also there's particular places on Earth that will align the moon between you and the sun, right? In other places on Earth, the sun will be below the moon or above. It just depends on where you're looking from. This is called parallax. So when we looked at charts to describe, for example, when this moment will be visible, where I live in the Bay Area of California, or, well, let's say like Washington, D.C., for example, the week before an inauguration, we'll have to use topocentric Earth surface calculations by looking for the parallax moon. Even before I go there, why might we have maximum Mars right now? Or maybe let me even say weird Mars. So other things that came across my news stream, if we'd call it that very much interested me, though, some through terrifying me, in the last day. One was just hearing Trump at a press conference from his place in Florida saying that if hostages are not released in Gaza before he takes office on January 20th, 2025, that all hell will break loose. If you haven't seen that video, take a look. A reporter there is like, well, what does that mean? It's like, do I really need to tell you? Like, all hell will break loose. So kind of scary. I've been worried about the year 2025 in regards to a kind of global conflict for many, many years, as I've learned to see this linked to previous times where the United States has had Jupiter synodic returns, which were specifically at the beginning, or at least events that led to the Civil War in the United States in the 19th century, and then also the United States entrance into World War in 1942. So I've kind of been concerned around that. Other images are Uranus in Gemini, Uranus at the Uranian node. It's kind of on that same periodicity that Jupiter synodic returns 83 years, Uranus 84 years. So I've found that concerning for some time. One thing that people like about Trump, people who like peace, is that no new wars were said to begin during his previous time in the US presidency. He has said out loud that he doesn't start wars, he ends wars. For people who, like myself, think war is the worst thing possible, regardless of why you would justify it. I like the sound of that. But when I hear things like, if this doesn't happen, all hell will break loose, right? Or some of the kind of just strange, rather Martian or belligerent and certainly volatile and kind of bullying things we hear out of Trump, who likely was born with Mars rising, leading to his general redness, if you will. Things like, Greenland needs to be part of the United States. By the way, he was saying that 8 years ago, too. Things like Panama Canal needs to be reclaimed by the United States. We should have never sold it for $1. And, if China's there taxing boats that are coming through, why shouldn't that be the States? Yada, yada, yada. Some super belligerent statements about Canada is the 54th state of the United States, which I don't think Trump believes personally, but I don't also even want to try to put myself in that guy's head. But either way, there's kind of bully moves to make a deal and stuff. That seems to be that guy's signature. And I have to say, some of it seems to be quite effective. It's interesting that Trudeau is stepping out of office in Canada, for example. So anyway, we will see today as well that in the inauguration chart for Trump's second presidency, so January 20th, 2025. So the ceremony begins at 12 p.m. in Washington, D.C. I wonder when it is quote unquote official. I wouldn't consider a wedding moment to be the beginning of the ceremony. I would consider you pronounced, husband and wife, or wife and wife, or husband and husband, whatever it may be. Husband, wife, wife, depending on the state in which you reside, whatever. The pronouncement and you may kiss your whatever, I see that as the marriage moment. So I wouldn't necessarily clock it for the beginning of this ceremony. And so it'll be interesting to see how this might be adjusted on this date. But I do want to show you, actually, let's kind of start here. Some interesting things and places indicated in astrocartography at the moment of the coming inauguration. So let me just cast inauguration. And he has to spell publicly. January 20th, 25, 12 p.m., Washington, D.C. All right. Which looks like this. I mean, it's a fascinating chart, by the way. It's just the day before the first Sun-Pluto conjunction in the sign of Aquarius in our lifetimes. It's interesting to see Venus-Saturn, by the way. Let me stop this so I don't share client names as I bring up Trump's chart. The reason why I say that is, though in different signs, Venus will conjoin Saturn in Pisces on January 18th. Trump was born with Venus conjunct Saturn also in the water sign, but the water sign of Cancer, where Mars is now retrograde. So let me show you Trump's chart. And some have argued about the time. I think Trump was born with Regulus rising. That's the time that was kind of first offered for Trump by astrologers. This is during a lunar eclipse. Signs of truth is truth itself eclipsed. Who knows? Truth Social is one of his joints, right? We'll check out the strength in the 11th house where we find Cancer, Mercury, Venus, Saturn. Some would be shocked to see Cancer in Trump's chart at all, but the people who are around Trump say that he's a very kind of fatherly figure. He's very involved in his children's life, on and on we go. But it is intriguing to see at this time of the inauguration, there is, like at the time of Trump's birth, a Venus-Saturn conjunction. And then it's also particularly intriguing, I find, to see Mars retrograde at the time of the coming inauguration on January 20th, right there at Trump's Venus-Saturn conjunction in Cancer, while Venus and Saturn themselves are conjunct in Pisces, squaring his eclipse, his node, squaring even more, precisely or accurately, Uranus. We see Jupiter retrograde at the time of the inauguration, near Trump's Uranus. Jupiter actually had already conjoined Trump's Uranus before stationing. Where are we at? Before stationing retrograde. Here is Jupiter's retrograde on October 9th, 24. So it just in the transit chart, we see for Trump, Jupiter conjoined Uranus and Uranus at the midheaven, right? So we can see things like Trump's Uranus is being expanded, maybe fired up in the like some of the Uranus in Gemini, which by the way is where Uranus's nodes reside in the Gemini Sagittarius axis. Trump born in the 40s, shortly after the bombs were dropped the year before, right, with Uranus in Gemini at the Uranian node. But I just want to show these times. So Jupiter conjunct natal Uranus, and the first of these three passings was August 22nd, 24. In retrograde, and look at where Uranus is at Trump's, probable midheaven at that time. Depends on the time of the chart, which, there's debate about. This is also meaning Uranus, regardless of Trump's birth time, squaring his natal Mars. All right. Jupiter retrograde will transit the natal Uranus once again on November 25th, or has 24. Look at where Uranus is to the degree of this midheaven, and also close to the square with Mars. And then Jupiter will conjoin Uranus a final time on April 12th, 25, again with Uranus here at Trump's midheaven. We see Venus and Saturn together at that time, just as they are in the inauguration of January 20th. We see Mars also at the natal Venus-Saturn, just like in January 20th. The difference is at the inauguration, Mars retrograde, and here in April, Mars now direct, heading back into Leo, heading back for a third and final opposition to Pluto in current, like, interesting times. And I'm hoping, like, look at the moon on Jupiter here at this time of the final Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And look also at the inauguration chart on January 20th, the moon in Libra at Trump's Jupiter. So that's like a prayer place I want to go. I also want to look at like these Venus-Saturn trines to the natal Venus-Saturn. Like, I want to keep hope, and, that even some of the volatile kind of belligerent name calling and clear public statement of ultimatums will lead to peace. So why can't I hope and dream? The 11th house. All right. So anyway, things look volatile. And as I shared before, there are very interesting things on the astrocartography map at the time of the inauguration regarding specific places on Earth that have kind of been in the Trumpy news of late. All right. So I'm going to first turn off these local space lines, and we're just going to zoom in, check out how Mars at the time of the inauguration, or at least at this 12 p.m. time in DC that I have here cast. Again, I kind of like you are pronounced the whatever president feels more like the time I would use. The chart itself is intriguing. See how Mars is down at the IC. That means, by the way, for the northern hemisphere, like Washington, D.C., that Mars is north. And in fact, Mars is so north that Mars is out of bounds. I will get back to that. But dig how this means Mars at the IC, that's a meridian or a longitudinal or north-south line. Dig how it goes north up into Canada. I mean, that's just Canada being north of DC, right? But look, like at the moment, more precisely, south at Panama. That's interesting. And I'm embarrassed to say I don't know where in Canada, but where in Panama the Panama Canal is, and I would like to find out. Let's go to Greenland, where in the moment of the inauguration, Mars will be rising, Mercury setting, the sun setting, Pluto setting. Kind of intriguing. Let's look over to Ukraine-Russia border, actually, right? If I bring the cities back in, look at how this Uranus midheaven line is right between Moscow and Kyiv. And then let's head further south and we will find how close that is to Israel. I mean, really rather intriguing. Now we're looking at Mars lines, Uranus lines, right? They don't have to be warish and volatile, but they have more access to that type of behavior than the other beings of the planetary crew typically do. So I don't want to be like fearmonger astrologer, right? But I do find some of these things quite concerning. It makes me wonder, by the way, how Trump's birth moment, if indeed this moment I had on the screen is Trump's birth moment, how it addresses some of these places on Earth. And look at Mars. I hadn't seen this yet, by the way, but Mars is at the midheaven here in Europe. We get Uranus in Iran. Let's look at Greenland. The sun is at the midheaven. Uranus was at the midheaven in Greenland when Trump was born. There's a lot of energy there. Mercury at the midheaven, Neptune rising. But, Trump was born during an eclipse, and eclipses are moon-sun node, right? So here's the moon, the sun, and the node in Greenland, and then down into Brazil at the time of Trump's birth. And then we get Mars rising very close to where he was born in Queens, New York, but also I think even closer to Washington, D.C. One other thing maybe I'd look at is just the local space lines and see what's heading over this way, where we see Neptune, Chiron, Jupiter heading towards Israel and Middle East. So some kind of intriguing things. I don't want this to be all about Trump. Storytelling hour, by the way. So what about some other things in the news? One thing I was particularly interested in is Zuckerberg coming out with this public statement that Meta, meaning Facebook, Instagram, are going to go away from third-party fact-checking and more towards community-based fact-checking, if you will, community notes like the X platform has. Now, I find that to be an incredibly Pluto in Aquarius, or just generally speaking, Aquarius statement. Like, let's trust the public instead of some organization. Do you feel moving from Capricorn to Aquarius? Who are these Snopes and fact-checking people? I'm very intrigued to see, I was mentioning this on Instagram earlier today, like that people are fleeing these places as a result. It's like, oh, no more censorship, I'm out. Like, it's so backwards to me. I'm a very mercurial Gemini oriented. You have your truth, I have mine. Say what you got to say. If I hate it, I'm not going to listen. If I know it's bullshit, I might even call you out. But whatever, I have the right to make my own judgments, and I don't need some big brother telling me what is true and what is not. And the idea that we should like release the sovereignty of free speech so that we can be protected from lies is just horrifies me. Absolutely horrifies me. That doesn't have to be the truth for you. I mean, not to offend you. I want to try to keep my own Mars in check at this time, and I recommend that we all do, because I think Mars is pretty extra super strong at this time. Now, it's interesting you use that term strong. We might say weird. We might say out there. So let me go to right now in Storytelling Hour time. And we're actually going to move forward from there to a very particular event on Monday, Moon Day. Sorry about Maya expressing some of her Mars right now. Monday, Moon Day. Though I believe in Africa, where this coming Mars occultation will also be visible. Tuesday, Mars's day. Occultation of Mars by the moon. All right. So first of all, what is an occultation of Mars? I want to show you a beautiful image of one. I gotta say, I feel that I think it's Andrew McCarthy, and I'm so glad I saw that because I was about to say the wrong last name for him. Of Cosmic Background, right? You can find Andrew's beautiful photos on Instagram, Facebook, like wherever, all over the place. This is his website, cosmicbackground.io. This is an image clearly of the moon, and this is Mars. This would be, where is he shooting from? Maybe this is from he's just turned the photo. I think it's a Northern Hemisphere point of view. I have to take the date, but if so, this would be the moon after occulting Mars. Let's go to his homepage because I know he's taken many photographs of occultations recently, right? And these aren't like, there's one right there. These aren't AI images, even though you might be shocked by the resolution and the detail in the moon. But he, like so many astrophotographers these days, is working with telescopes and then also stacking multiple images, right? It's challenging to shoot the moon and anything because the moon is so bright. So I don't need to get into the details. I can't. I just want to honor this man and others like him who are helping us see some of these celestial events. And so here's an image, obviously, of moon and Mars so close, and it's either right before or right after an occultation of Mars. I was fortunate enough to see one of these. It's actually the first planetary occultation I was able to see with my own eyes some years ago in November or December, I believe, where kind of a crew of us met at the solar calendar at the Berkeley Marina, a very modern stone circle, and watched the moon eat Mars, and then about an hour later spit Mars out on the other side. The conversation got very interesting, including, and I think Mars was in Scorpio at the time, including someone telling me the stories about how, because he was not complying, he was in the Navy and put in like the brig, so put in Navy jail on a ship. And some of the things, like you had to stand on a spot, you couldn't sit down, or things would happen to you. Like that was part of the punishment, which is wild. So it was like a really weird time during lockdown craziness and stuff when this happened. And just the way that I noticed, even in this small gathering of people, some of the Martian essence showing itself coming through, and other things that were in the chart at the time was rather telling and intriguing. I mean, when we go out and connect ceremoniously, reverently with these heavenly happenings, and especially when we do that, when we gather with more than one, as it is said by the sun, you really get to notice. I remember one time when I had an eclipse ceremony on a beach in Seattle, Washington, and we weren't supposed to be having fires on the beach at that time, but we did. With a lot of water and controlled fire keeper wisdom people around, by the way. But I was talking about Saturn. We were looking at Saturn, and then up came this old man who told us to put the fire out. Pretty intriguing. And we're talking about Mercury one time, and I think a Mercury Saturn thing, and out up on Mount Tabor in Portland, and just then they locked the gate, so all of our cars, Mercury got Saturn stuck in the parking lot. And we actually went quite out of bounds and drove through the forest to get out of there. I probably shouldn't say those things out loud. Oh my God, is this on? Oh, shoot. Anyway, Mars out of bounds. So let's talk about what that means. It's very much happening right now. I can actually show you the time frame around this. Sadly, in this particular software that I love, I can't graph this yet, which other softwares would let me do, making it a little bit easier for me. But let me just share with you, first of all, what out of bounds planets mean. If you are in the Constellations community, you would have received a recent teaching about this and other teachings throughout the year. And I can talk more with you about what Constellations is and how you can join in a bit. But first, I'm just going to show the midheaven lines in astrocartography. Actually, maybe even before I do, I want to show you the reality of the zodiac. Okay, the tropical zodiac, the bounds of the zodiac are the tropics. Hence the tropical zodiac. Tropikos is Greek for turnaround, okay? And that happens at 0 tropical Capricorn, which is always above the Tropic of Capricorn. Not always here in the Pacific, okay, because the Earth spins, right? Like, let me just send this an hour from now. Well, actually, I did a month from now by accident, but it didn't work. So here's an hour from now. Oh, it's not changing because it's not a transit chart. Whatever. Anyway, the Earth spins. So it's not like 0 Capricorn is always going to be at the midheaven here, but it will always be above Earth's Tropic of Capricorn, just as 0 Aries will always be above Earth's equator, equinox equator. 0 Cancer always above Earth's Tropic of Cancer. Libra above the equator. And hopefully you can see that we have northern signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, taking us to the northern extreme. Cancer, Leo, Virgo, bringing us back from it to the equator. And then southern signs, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, bringing us to the southern extreme, the Tropic of Capricorn. And then turning around Tropicos from there, we come back towards the equator, southern signs getting less south, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. All right. If you're watching this, by the way, on Instagram and on some tiny screen, you might want to come over to my YouTube page, GeminiBrett.com/YouTube. I don't know, maybe I've already said things that are there that will get this thing taken down. We shall see. Okay, let me bring in the midheaven lines for the planets. This is just for today at Storytelling Hour when we began. And what you will see is Mars is here north of the Tropic of Cancer. All right, so this means Mars has a declination, that's a measurement north or south of Earth's equator, that exceeds the tropics, that exceeds the tilt angle of Earth. This is a place the sun could never even dream to go. All right, and actually, let's do this on a map. This will be fun. So let's just make a transit chart here of now, and we'll turn this thing around. And let me see if I can limit our view to only Marsy stuff. Here's Mars and the sun. And let's just go back a couple months. And by the way, if you play with Astro Gold maps, you don't have these buttons yet, but you will soon. A most amazing addition to mapping stuff. Okay, so here's a month ago. And you can see at that time, Mars, who was then in Leo retrograde, was not out of bounds, was within the declinations of the zodiac, which means, or the sun's path between the tropics, okay? But if we just go by, let's go weeks first, and we'll find the crossing of Mars, which looks to be here, Okay, so we're now on like December 30th. All right, and let me just go to December 30th. Oh, I already did. Great. You can bring in a declinations list. And here in Astro Gold software, once Mars gets out of bounds, and he's not yet out of bounds in our day and age, the tilt angle of Earth, 23 degrees, 26 arc minutes, and 17 seconds. Okay, so 23, 24, still slightly in bounds. Let's just go a day later. New Year's Eve, Mars out of bounds. All right. I'd still like to do this graphically at first, so the maps really help with this. This is now Mars north of the Tropic of Cancer. And let's go by weeks. There's going to be many of these weeks. And just see how Mars is, it looks like he's kind of peaking north maybe here in late February. And then coming back. All right, so it looks like maybe April-ish. Right after March, the month named for Mars, Mars comes back in bounds, crosses south of the Tropic of Cancer again, okay? So let's check this out on charts. Here's this April 8th time. We see Mars's declination then 23 north 18. Okay, so Mars back in bounds, whereas a week before, 23 north 56. So this seems to be something like December 31st to April 6th or 7th, if you're into that whole Gregorian trip. And I've cast this for Richmond, California, where I live. So give or take a day on your own personal calendar. All right. So 4 months-ish, January, February, March, 3 months-ish of Mars out of bounds. All right. Well, what does it mean? Means Mars is breaking out of the dojo. Right? He's going to go his own way. I'm like literally exploring spaces that the sun couldn't even dream of going to, like probably doesn't even know about, right? The moon does this. The moon does this especially when the north node of the moon reaches 0 tropical Aries. And the year before and the year after, when the moon heads to the southern bounds, all right, or past the southern bounds, which are the Tropic of Capricorn, so the Sagittarius Capricorn cusp, or the northern bounds, the Gemini Cancer cusp. The moon every month south and north will go out of bounds. And that, again, peaks. It's called the maximum lunar standstills when the moon's north node, the north lunar node, is at 0 degrees tropical Aries. I'm going to share a couple things. One is at GeminiBrett.com. Not only could you find this, subscribe to the newsletter button, a donate button if you'd like to buy me some tea. You will find a button here to book astrology sessions or support the work by investigating Song of the Soul. But at Constellations Community, if you click that tab, or simply GeminiBrett.com/constellations, maybe I'll put that in the chat for you. You can find out about the School of Astrology's membership community. It's only $16 a month. There's a teaching every week. I teach one of those once a month. It looks like I shared the wrong thing with you. So let me put this on the screen. Oh, buttons. Here's where you can find more about Constellations. So GeminiBrett.com/constellations. I'm going to put that in the chat for you now. Check us out. But I just recently taught of, 2.5, 3 hour class with some community discussion following it on the lunar standstill cycle. There in Constellations, months ago, I taught a class on declinations and parallels, which is right on topic. And I also brought in a synastry in declination and parallel in a synastry class I taught earlier this year. So all those things, by the way, will be available to you as soon as you sign up. There's many folks here who are in Constellations, and it's awesome to see you. But could let people know that it's good if you'd like in the chat. I want to bring you now to another place, ncgrsanfrancisco.org, our local Bay Area chapter of the National Council of Geocosmic Research. I sit on the board along with many amazing beings, including, I think I saw two names here, who are Winter Weldon and Kevin Mallett. And many of us will be contributing to a view of specific astrological features during the year of 2025 on January 18th. You can register for free. We'll be broadcasting from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., maybe a little bit longer on Saturn's Day, January 18th, 2025. These are the topics. And the thing I will be focusing in on are the lunar nodes crossing the equator. That means Aries becoming Pisces, Libra becoming Virgo, because of course the nodes travel generally in retrograde, okay, and that the lunar standstill cycle, and what that might have to say about this year ahead. It's the moon going out of bounds. Now, with the moon heading out of bounds north, dang it, that wasn't on your screen either. Come on buttons. Now this is, okay, so ncgrsanfrancisco.org will lead you to everything I was just trying to show you. And you can click here. And by the way, check out Dr. William Morris in February when we was speaking about the use of declination in medical astrology. I'm very much looking at LED on dreaming and the lunar cycle. So part of what I'll be sharing in this free look ahead at specific happenings in the astrology of 2025, which is here, lunar nodes crossing the equator in the lunar standstill cycle, kind of like goes with these other things. You can see Michelle Dench will be speaking about Jupiter squaring the nodes, Winter Weldon, the Aries Venus star point, Kevin Mallett, Uranus into Gemini, Greg Nella's signature of Saturn and Neptune, Steve Pincus, Uranian astrology insights for the year and years ahead. So I hope you'll join us. It's completely free. Click this button to go register on Zoom. We will see you there on January 18th, 2025, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific. All right. If you are a member of our chapter, by the way, and you register but can't make it live, we'll send you a recording. If you're not a member of our chapter, register and then send a donation of $10 or more sometime this month, and we will send you the recording. Okay. Where do we want to go from there? Thanks for receiving all of that. Great. When the moon goes out of bounds, north, and Mars is out of bounds, north, we have the opportunity for Martian occultations by the moon. Thank you for saying this, Nadine. And Kevin. Yeah, all along the Pacific Highway from the Pacific Palisades to Malibu, it looks like a Mars hellscape. Like what happened in Lahaina. It's just terrifying and massively Martian. And why would Mars be kind of extra ramped up right now? So actually, even before I get to this occultation, let me just say that there's a few very clear kind of astronomical contributions of Mars overload right now. One of these is Mars out of bounds. Another, I would suggest, is Mars in Cancer. Now, I need to be careful. I was born Mars out of bounds in Cancer. Didn't do it. But also Mars retrograde. What does Mars retrograde mean astronomically? It means Earth is passing Mars by. All right, let's take a peek at that, because I feel like, images always support, right? So we are going to head to really wonderful software that you can play with for free at solarsystemscope.com. You can download a high-def version, which is this. At the time that I bought it, I think it was $10. I don't know what it is now. This is right now. And notice that in our mutual orbits about the light, Earth is now passing Mars by. All right. You can see this in a geocentric, that means Earth-centered chart. How? Sun opposite Mars. All right. So let's take a look at that. We will just move from now to Sun opposite Mars. Which will happen, I mean, locally at 6:38 p.m. Pacific, January 15th, Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. Okay, so this occultation of Mars will also be by a very near full moon. We'll be spending more time with that very soon. All right. Let's go to this date, January 15th, 25 here in this heliocentric or sun-centered model. All right, and you will see now from Earth's point of view, Sun opposite Mars. Okay, so in the geocentric charts that 99% of the time we are using as astrologers, right? Because we're looking at the heavens from Earth. So the center of Earth is the center of the chart, right? The passing of Mars by Earth, the middle of Mars is retrograde, means Sun opposite Mars. Can you see why that would be? Let me just rewind time. Here's Earth passing Mars by, right? Mars tends to retrograde for about 2 months-ish during his, generally speaking, like 24-month cycle with the sun. Let me go back to when, though we certainly couldn't see it, some time ago in 2023, the sun was between us and Mars. So this would be a Sun-Mars conjunction. It's happened in the sign of Scorpio, November 17th, 2023. Kind of close here. Okay, so Mars deep under the beams of the sun. Mars is the planet that disappears in the flames of the sun for the longest. That's kind of an intriguing thing to consider, and to consider if that contributes to the general delineation of both sun, especially, and also Mars is hot and dry, right, of the fiery nature. But it's about 2 years, 24 to 26 months between consecutive Sun-Mars conjunctions. So after November 17th, 2023, the following Sun-Mars conjunction in the sign of Capricorn, January 9th, 26. So in this case, it was about 25 months and a bit, right? Well, halfway-ish in between those times, we get Sun opposite Mars. So Sun and Mars on opposite sides of the Earth. All right, that's happening now. Now, Mars sun cycles from Earth's point of view kind of vary in time. Why? Because orbits are not circles, they are ellipses. Earth is much more circular than the very eccentric Mercury. Solar System Scope does a good job of showing how eccentric or elliptical Mercury's path is. And Mars's path is quite eccentric or elliptical as well. For Mars, probably a better word would be chaotic, where Venus is the planet that has the most circular or non-elliptical or non-eccentric path. And that should make sense because Venus, of course, goddess of harmony. By the way, we have to go all the way out to Neptune to find a planet who competes with the circular nature of Venus's orbit. Neptune, often called the higher octave of Venus, isn't it? Yes, right. So anyway, Mars is kind of chaotic, elliptical orbit, causes situations like a non-regular period of time between consecutive Sun-Mars conjunctions or Sun-Mars oppositions when Earth is passing Mars by. It also causes issues like just because Sun is opposite Mars, that does not necessarily mean it's the moment when Earth and Mars are closest to one another, because there's points of Earth's path where Earth is furthest from the sun. And by the way, that's July, not January, right? And of course, when we are further from the sun, we're closer to Mars's orbital path. And there are places where Mars is particularly close to the sun, and Cancer is not one of those places, okay? If you want to know where those are, by the way, and why not, let's head over to a really wonderful place you can play with also for free online called the True Node Ephemeris. You can also give donations. I'm actually due to donate to this space, but I will do that later when I don't show the world my credit card number, right? So I can just type here Mars, and then let's go from like January 1st, 2000 to, let's do like, 100 lines separated by months. And we're going to look for Mars's perihelion, which means where Mars is closest to the sun, and aphelion, where Mars is furthest from the sun. And let's look from a heliocentric or sun point of view first. So where does the sun see Mars closest to the sun? And the answer, and these won't change that much, is Mars is closest to the sun in Pisces and furthest away in Virgo. Now, those terms really come from Earth zodiac. I'll just show you, interestingly, that when we're looking from Earth, so geocentric, the perihelions and aphelions of Mars, they change much more. But you're just going to see signs like Aquarius, Pisces, Capricorn for Mars close to the sun, and signs in the opposite direction, Libra, Leo, Virgo, Cancer, where Mars is furthest from the sun, okay? When Mars is far from sun, that means Mars is going to be further from Earth, even though Earth is passing Mars by, bringing Mars for this particular cycle to perigee, close to Earth. Then he will be in other signs. Like if we go back in time, or let's go forward in time, the next one of these things, this passing, actually, you know what? Well, that'll work. So we see, well, you know what? I want to go back in time, because there was one that was crazy close. I got to see it with my own face in Sedona space not too long ago, longer now. And I'd like see how close Earth and Mars were in this particular passing in 2020. Interesting, given the nature of that year. Look at this one in 2018. I think this is one where Mars and Earth were particularly close, because not only was Mars very close to the sun at that time, but Earth, and this is true every July, was particularly far from the sun. And so it brought the two of them quite close. Like if we were going to launch a mission to Mars, and maybe we did, that would be a wonderful time to do so. Hopefully all that was on your screen. So regardless of this particular sun opposite Mars, in other words, Earth passing Mars by, regardless of the truth that it's not as close as it gets, it's still Mars damn close to Earth. And look, friends, this is not only true of Mars. I just want to honor that I'm seeing Stephanie right, that the last time there was a really bad California brush fire was in 2018. Fascinating. And Stephanie sending love to you and yours, and to everyone who's feeling the heat right now. That being said, I always think you're in California, but you're not. But plenty are, right? So, Kevin, regardless of the truth that this is not like the closest Mars gets, Mars is damn close. Every time in the middle of Mars's retrograde period, or near the middle of Mars's retrograde period, which means Earth passing Mars by, this is Mars close to Earth. So, launch your missions to Mars, or do some months before as we're preparing to pass. So yes, Mars proximity, a huge deal. And by the way, retrograde planet means that planet close to Earth. Whether we're talking about Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the planets whose orbital paths live beyond Earth's journey about the sun, or the interior decorators, who of course are Venus and Mercury. When Mercury and Venus are retrograde, they are passing Earth by, they're close to Earth. When Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the planets we can't see are retrograde, that's Earth passing them by close to Earth, okay? So consider the truth that super close planet might increase that planet's nature. Okay, so there's one key of Mars overload. right now. Another key is Mars out of bounds. Out of bounds planets are less confined by the rules. We can imagine Mars might dig that. That being said, where are the places Mars is most likely to go out of bounds? And this is true for all planets until we get to really weird orbital paths like Pluto. Pluto actually only goes out of bounds in the signs of Leo and Aquarius in our day and age. Pluto now in Aquarius will go out of bounds some years from now. Let's cross that bridge when it comes. But for the most part, the planets and all the things that astronomers now call planet, right? They are most likely to go out of bounds in the solstice sign. So those being Gemini. Yes, Gemini is as much a solstice sign as Cancer. And Sagittarius, Capricorn. An interesting thing is to consider, does Mars go out of bounds in Capricorn as much as he does in Cancer? A way we can look at that, by the way, is just looking at declination, and AstroGold software kind of makes it easy for us because they indicate out of bounds planets that have a declination or distance from Earth's equator greater than Earth's tilt angle or the latitude of the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. They indicate this out of bounds nature with purple font here. And I'm just going to push things like, Mars into Capricorn. I'm going to go back in time for this one. And we're going to see things like a lot of not out of bounds. Here's one. Although, you know what? I put the moon in Capricorn. Sorry. Mars. Let's go back in time some. Yeah, and so we can see here Mars in Capricorn. Mars at that solstice point. Almost always out of bounds. I mean, I think every instance of Mars at the Capricorn cusp that I'm asking AstroGold software to investigate gives us purple font. So out of bounds Mars. I'm all the way back in 1954 now. This one's pretty close to the tropic, which is 2326. But all of these have been out of bounds. Let's test Cancer. And we're starting back in 1946 now. And interesting to start there. Given what we were looking at together before, Mars and Cancer, out of bounds, out of bounds, out of bounds, out of bounds, out of bounds. Some more than others, right? There's one that's not. 1960. That's what made the 60s normal. But how about 61, 61, 62, 64... 66. Why would we get 2 in 1 year? And the answer is Mars retrograded across that point, right? Here's 68, 1970. Bounds, right? So typically when Mars is at the Earth's axis, wait, what? Yes, the truth of the tropical zodiac is Earth's North Pole leans towards 0 Cancer always. That's astronomy. Earth astronomy. Earth's South Pole leans towards 0 Capricorn always. So typically in the mutual dance of Earth and of Mars about the sun, when Mars, from Earth's point of view, is aligned either to our North Pole 0 Cancer or our South Pole 0 Capricorn, Mars is out of bounds, beyond the bounds, the limitations of the sun's path north and south of the equator, Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, respectively. Okay, I was interested in seeing, because you may know this rumor and this code from the astrological tradition, that Mars is said to be exalted in Capricorn, right? Mars is said to keep homes in the signs of Aries, warrior, samurai, and Scorpio, ninja, sorcerer. The samurai, Aries, ninja, Scorpio, I first heard from Austin Coppock. I love that. And unlike signs of so-called rulership, or I prefer the old term domicile, these are the planet's houses, there are also exaltation where planets are said to be honored guests, right? So Scorpio is said to just be Mars's home, whereas Capricorn is said to be a place Saturn's home, where Mars is an honored guest, right? And specifically, by the way, the 28th degree of Capricorn, which means 27 plus. So you know what might be another fun thing for us to do together? I have no idea what this is going to show. Of course, the 28th degree much further from Earth's pole, 0 Capricorn, than 0 Capricorn is. But let's place Mars, while looking at his declination, not only in Capricorn, but specifically at this exalted degree of Capricorn. Let's go Mars to 27 Cap 30. And Mars is then inbounds. And here's one where he was almost out of bounds in 2033. I'm going to go back in time too. So Mars at the exalted degree, the 28th degree of Capricorn, almost always inbounds. Here's one actually 1986 where Mars was out of bounds in the exalted degree. And let's see if we can find another one back in time. Oh yeah, there were a couple in a row and like pretty extremely out of bounds. 1939, interesting. And 1939 also, when Mars was retrograding. So when planets retrograde, they do these loops, so they're more likely to get further from the sun's path, and at the solstice points, more likely to go out of bounds. I'm interested in looking at this for Mars in Cancer as well, because opposite to the degree of exaltation is said to be the degree of a planet's fall. So I'm just looking again at declination and seeing if we have out of bounds experience for Mars when at these degrees. Interesting, we're in 1946 again. Trump, born when? 1946. Okay. Let's continue on with just a little bit of our research project. Hopefully you find this fun. If you don't, I'm sure you've already left. If you do, maybe I can show you how to solve the Rubik's Cube, you nerd like me. That's what I've been up to lately. So let's see if we can get Mars out of bounds in Cancer again. I do want you to note, I should have showed this while it was happening, that like in 1978, Mars was retrograde in Cancer at this exalted, or sorry, the opposite of fallen degree of Cancer for Mars in 1946. So in 78, we get Mars retrograde in Cancer, out of bounds at the exalted degree. Let's at least move to the present time. And I think that's basically how we could see Mars in this so-called fallen degree, out of bounds. It's going to be maybe exclusively when Mars is retrograde at that degree. And we saw that happened in 1978, and it seems to not have happened since. Okay, well, that's going to let us play with time and history a little bit, which I'm smiling because I just got a text from History Anne about 1709, and she says she was just looking for the same reason I was, and we will together. Okay, January 12th, 2025, Mars retrograde at the so-called fallen degree. So this is this Sunday, right? Right after, by the way, the time that the lunar nodes move across on January 12th, move from tropical Aries to tropical Pisces. So Mars trining the node as well. But let me just go back, because when Mars came to this degree first, it opposed Pluto from very near that degree, the last degree of Cancer, in November of 24th, on November 3rd. Mars here was not out of bounds. But retrograde Mars back across this degree of, said in the code of Mars's fall, is out of bounds. And my suspicion is when Mars comes back across, direct, no longer out of bounds. And we know that to be true, though. Remember, we saw just days before this, Mars was out of bounds, right? So just after Mars comes back inbounds, Mars returns to that degree. Okay. Well, that's a lot. I could just cut to the chase, but that's not how I roll. And I want to show you some of the, like, let's investigate together. Let's explore, right? Some just want the answers in the back of the book. I feel you. You've left my channel long ago, but here we are together. And I'm sure you play with charts like I do. Here, I'm adding some things maybe you've looked at, declination, out of bounds, etc. Maybe not. If not, I'm happy to offer that, and I hope you will play. Okay, so Mars out of bounds. Kind of weird Mars, breaking the rules, maybe going completely unhinged, maybe in a Martian way. That can bring fires, perhaps. That can bring wars. It's not like these wars have started now, but on Mars's day, we do have the president-to-be talking about all hell will break loose. If a planet's going to say that, who says that? And by the way, it's not Pluto. Like for Pluto, there's no breaking loose. It just is living there, right? For Mars, like, hell will break loose, right? And just kind of threatening, volatile, kind of bullying stance that we've been hearing. If you listen, that feels pretty Martian. Separations, overstimulations, right? Injuries. I picked up Koa yesterday from school. He had a sling on. It's like, dude, what happened? Anyway. So when during this period of Mars out of bounds might we expect Mars to go craziest? Now, I would suggest that Cancer is kind of a crazy place for Mars. Now, I have Mars in Cancer. Again, I want to be careful. I have Mars out of bounds in Cancer. I'm not trying to talk smack about me. I'm not trying to show too many of my cards. So, and I never like to blame my chart on stupid shit that I do. But it is helpful to look in your chart and be like, I can see why that might be something I would do. And wouldn't it be better if I can work with that energy and transmute that and utilize it in a way that looks much more beautiful? So what if I use my Cancer Mars to nurture my baby, right? Instead of get all hot because she's crying, Okay, anyway. I shall keep a few of these things to myself. I just had a quick trip down memory lane. We're going to be okay. Perhaps, even though Leo is the fire sign, perhaps Mars in Cancer is a place where the out of bounds Mars is more likely in this particular loop to express in volatility. So let's actually just look at when did Mars return to Cancer. From Leo. And the answer is January 6th. So Mars's day, Tuesday on the other side of the date line. We have a friend here from New Zealand, for example. And then Mars will leave Cancer and return to Leo on April 17th after the retrograde period ends. And obviously, because Mars is moving direct now. And also after the out of bounds period ends, which we saw is in very early April as far as the Gregorian calendar expresses time. All right. Why would Cancer be a place where Mars goes particularly crazy? Because if Capricorn is a place where Mars is an honored guest, Cancer is a place where Mars is the opposite of this, right? Now, a way that I like to share this, and of course I'm not the first, is a really great analogy is the planets are like the actors in the play. The signs are like the roles that they play, right? So Leo is a role for Mars to play versus Cancer is a role for Mars to play. Capricorn is a role for Mars to play. You might have seen that, like, that's strange that Mars would be exalted in Capricorn, right? I mean, isn't Capricorn rules and structures, and doesn't Mars help us break out of that stuff? Well, maybe I feel that way, but I was born with Mars in Cancer. Some say Mars in Capricorn is like the general. But what did we just see? That when Mars retrogrades across its exalted degree in Capricorn, he is likely to go out of bounds. We only looked at like a century's worth of times. I mean, you be careful there because that's a code that exists from thousands of years ago, these exalted degrees for the planets, okay? Some would suggest they're not even meant to be tropical zodiac expressions. I would actually suggest that what we just saw about Mars's loops bringing him out of bounds in this exalted degree maybe support the truth of the tropical zodiac. And I like this idea. Like when I see planets out of bounds in Sagittarius or Gemini, it's just like, they're just more Sagittarius or Gemini. Because Sagittarius is going to take us on the great adventure and go even for many planets outside of the sun's bounds. And then Capricorn's like, okay, get back. You have responsibilities, right? Gemini, who, what, why, when, where, right? What is truth anyway? Everything's true, right? It's going to take us out of bounds. And then Cancer's like, back home, right? And so when planets are out of bounds in Gemini or Sagittarius, I just think of them as like extreme Gemini or Sagittarius. When planets are out of bounds in Cancer or Capricorn, this ain't your grandma's Cancer. This ain't your granddaddy's Capricorn. It's like a whole other thing, right? And maybe Mars is exalted in Capricorn because he doesn't follow the rules. I don't necessarily feel that that's true, even as I'm speaking that, but it's an interesting thing to contemplate. I am sure there is astronomical source to these ideas of exaltations and falls. I would invite you Northern Hemisphere beings to go outside right now and look at how high above the ground Pisces Venus is after sunset. Exalted Pisces Venus. Exalted. See if you ever find Venus that high above your Northern Hemisphere ground with Venus and Pisces, and Venus and other signs. You will not. Right. So if Capricorn is kind of a role that Saturn is typecast to play, but Mars also fits into. Cancer would be a place where these things kind of become comedies, right? Mars in Aries, and you cast like the hero movie, right? Mars in Scorpio, maybe you write a Sherlock Holmes film. Mars in Cancer, and I'm dating myself, so is the color of my beard. It's Mr. Mom. And if you know that film, you see the cat like ironing a grilled cheese, right? Like just, maybe not the most natural fit. When we think Cancer, the moon does that quite naturally. The moon would be typecast to play that role. Jupiter is said to be exalted in Cancer, which is interesting. Well, look at the myths. Jupiter is very intent on helping us honor even the strangers as if they are family. Mars in Cancer, we're ironing grilled cheese. So it's one of the factors I would suggest is significantly contributing to a lot of Mars overload right now. Retrograde, meaning Mars is close. Cancer, meaning Mars is kind of playing a role opposite to the nature of roles where Mars naturally fits. Out of bounds, Mars beyond the limits of the zodiac path. As we have seen, this will persist through inauguration date, February, March, April. Be careful with your Mars. And what if we applied close, out of bounds Cancer Mars in such a way that we break our own limitations and offer and give and exude nurturing energy for those who need it? That might be a great way to play with this. So let me just say, I love you. Thank you for the present of your presence. Thank you for supporting my work. Okay, we will wrap up with this. And especially, hey, if you live in the United States or in Western Africa, let's bring the map back up. You have the opportunity to, clouds allowing, or sadly, let's also honor smoke allowing, to see this Mars retrograde that is coming our way. And maybe I lost the plot. Let me go back to, if I just do Mars occultation. Sorry, I said retrograde, but I meant Mars occultation. Out of bounds. Now, I find inthesky.org, he says it with pauses because there are hyphens between each of those words, to be a really wonderful source to learn when occultations are happening and where they will be able to be seen. So this map will show you that United States, northern Canada, especially northeastern Canada, Mexico, and then like, is that Azores, Canary Islands, Cape Verde, Western Africa, Northwestern Africa, we're all in the zone. Okay, now that being said, let's look at the time of the coming Mars occultation. So let me bring some more planets in here. And I'm going to just say Moon conjunct Mars. So January 13th, Moon Day, 7:53 p.m. All right, so Moon hiding Mars from our point of view. Let me relocate this to, what's an example of a place over here? Let me pick one. I'm embarrassed to say my African geography is not great. The only place I've been in Africa thus far in my life is to Egypt. So let's go kind of like right in the heart of those places. I know Ouagadougou is the capital of Burkina Faso because I loved saying that when I was in 8th grade and in Mr. Brock's geography class, when we were graded strictly on our ability to memorize the capitals of the states and countries of the world. Let's go to Dakar because it's going to be easier to type. So I will relocate this moment. I'm going to relocate it to Washington, D.C. We'll take a look there when we close. And let's go to Dakar, Senegal. Okay, so when I look at this Moon-Mars conjunction, which will indeed be on Mars's day there in Senegal, I wanted to see if the sun was beneath the ground, and it is, okay? Because one very important part of seeing the moon occult a planet is we have to be able to see that planet. And that means nighttime. Yeah. So we want places to be nighttime, and perhaps In the Sky's map is also honoring that truth. I just want to move a couple things around so it's easier to get you there when I'm going to share this map once again. Yeah, I'm guessing. Well, I don't know. That's true. Anyway, let's get back to the charts. You just get the Brett inside of Brett inside of Brett inside of Brett inside of Brett because it helps me guarantee that you're going to be able to see what I'm trying to show you on the screen. So I'm going to do this for where I live locally first. Well, let's do it for DC. So in DC, Libra rising chart, therefore Moon conjoins Mars in the 10th. And notice that this is dang near the full moon. Okay, we're going to see that the moon along with Mars is significantly out of bounds. I can do that on this points list where we also find Mercury out of bounds at this time. We see that the moon's declination at 2509 north is significantly close to the declination of Mars at 24 north 56, meaning they're only 13 arc minutes away in declination. We could also, so that's a measurement from Earth's equator, the plane of our daily rotation, the primary motion, or we could also see this in the similar latitudes, also off by 13 arc minutes for Moon and Mars, latitude being the angular distance, in this case, north or south of the ecliptic, the plane of the year, our orbital path, or from Earth's point of view, the path that the sun takes every year as we see it apparently travel about us, all right? So for an occultation to happen, we need moon and a planet conjoined not only by degree, but also that's like the x-axis, if you will, but also by the y-axis, how far north or south of that place are they. Let's cast this chart in Stellarium astronomy software. I'm going to do this for where I live because I selfishly want to find out the time, but you would cast your own place. And I'm going to go to January 13th. And it's happening around 5:30, I think. I have the planets supersized, so I'm going to stop that. And let's label them just in case that's helpful for you. So here's moonrise around 5 p.m. for our local point of view. And I can follow the moon. And now we get to see the moon occult Mars at 7:30. But my friends, that's not when it's going to go down. All right, I'm going to bring you to a map of this moment, and I want to show you Moon and Mars at the time, who are very close. Okay, so we saw that they had a very similar declination. That's their distance north of Earth's equator. We saw that they have a very similar celestial latitude. That's their distance north of Earth's, of Earth's ecliptic, our orbital path, or the sun's path, okay, the heart of the zodiac. Now, however, if I'm looking from here, I'm going to see them side by side. I'm not going to see the moon covering Mars. It's a very interesting thing. And the truth is, I need to cast these charts not from the center of the Earth, geocentric, but from the surface of Earth, right? Where we live, breathe, and can witness these heavenly happenings. And the moon is close enough to Earth. The moon is the only one of the celestial beings who is close enough to the Earth for there to be a measurable, an observational difference between center of Earth measurement, geocentric, and surface of Earth measurement, topocentric. And different places on the planet will have different places of the moon in any moment against the backdrop of the stars, including traveling, wandering stars, planetus like Mars. Just as my finger seems to be in a different place from my right eye's point of view than my left eye's point of view, right? Parallax, y'all. So some of the astrology softwares, some of the astronomy softwares, like Stellarium astronomy software here, I'm in so much debt, really, and certainly gratitude to them. I should send them a donation once again. Donate to me, and I will donate to these places I've been mentioning today. Or you can skip the middle, astrologer. Let's look at topocentric, in other words, Earth surface calculations. Oh, wow. So it's very different in time. I'm going to rewind time, and it's like here. Okay, 6:15 p.m. Good news. I mean, maybe my daughter is even going to be able to see this thing. I certainly want to take the lad in the place. He's a big fan of Mars. But maybe we'll do, it is Cancer after all, a whole family affair. We're here in the Bay Area of California. I live in El Sobrante Hills of Richmond, California. We get to see this happening from, it looks like, 6 p.m.-ish. Starting here, right? I'm going to speed up time to like there, like 6 to 7. Yeah, Maya goes to sleep around then, so we'll see. We don't have a great eastern or northeastern view, but the truth is, and actually let me show that again. I thought that the occultation was going to be much closer to Mars rise. So when I look here, like Mars re-emerging, the moon has 18 degrees altitude, right? So we can actually see that from our home. So maybe we'll just do this from home. Cancer. Yes. I want to take us now to Washington, D.C. Let me actually do this first. I'm going to go like to the best of my ability to what seems to be like the middle moment of the occultation here. Seemingly kind of around here, maybe a little bit later, somewhere in there. And then I'm going to relocate us to Washington, D.C. And we're going to find, first of all, Mars in a different place of the sky, a different house. They're in the 11th. And then at that time in DC, the occultation was just beginning. And this is what I learned actually from my first planetary occultation, which was that Moon-Mars occultation I was speaking about before. Nadine asked, will that time be the same for Baja? No, because you're looking from a different place on Earth. So use the tools. Cast a chart, put the parallax moon on. Okay, so we're going to do that now. And Nadine, name the place in Baja that you are closest to, and we'll use that place as an example. Here in Astro Gold software and in many astrology softwares, I have an option to turn on parallax for the moon. Okay. And then I think Astro Gold just corrected this upon my request. Maybe that's not true. This is still showing me the geocentric conjunction as my suspicion, but either way, I can just move through time here. And now I can get to when is the heart of this happening. And moon occultations, they're about an hour long. So I'm centered around, or Washington, D.C. is centered around 10 p.m. Virgo rising, Moon, Mars in the 11th of community, and by the way, of the people. And Moon, generally in mundane astrology, represents the people. Just want to kind of spend a little time looking at the trine to Neptune. Like, this isn't the day for me to read all this astrology. I want to show you the astronomy of this. I'm going to go back home. Let me show you in Senegal in the same moment, like half a degree apart. So this will be right around the time, really, when the moon is about 15 arc minutes from the planet, because the moon's about half a degree in diameter from Earth's point of view. So they got to pull within about 15 arc minutes, a quarter of a degree, like this. The occultation begins. So look, this doesn't happen till like 4:32 a.m. in Senegal, which is 11:32 p.m. in DC. See how the occultation's already ended there, right? It's like it's super trippy, and the occultation will begin first in places that are further west. This is true for solar occultations, for solar eclipses as well. People on the west side of the path always experience the visual eclipse or occultation of the sun before people on the east side of the path who experience it last. All right. So for me, like, I can see that the moon is already parallax moon anyway, a full degree and 10 arc minutes past Mars by that point. Right. So when I look for me here in El Sobrante, it really is. The moon rises, and shortly thereafter, we get the 15 arc minutes. Here's 10 at 6 p.m., and then perfecting around this time at 6:18 or something. So finally, I will look for Nadine in Sonata, Mexico. Let's get the chart back on the screen. Buttons. And yeah, it looks, Nadine, that actually it will be pretty much the same time for you. Kind of intrigued by that because it's not necessarily going to be a time zone thing. Like, and you're so far south of where I live. I'm very intrigued by that. Like, this is where it's happening here in the Atlantic, close to Africa. But it's like they're just like so right on top of one another that I don't know. I don't know how to finish that sentence. I would love to be able to interview some astronomers, like the people at inthesky.org who create these wonderful maps for us to see, to know when about occultations happen. I'm so grateful for astronomers of our day and age, although I also know that a great majority of them, if I asked them to come on my astrology podcast to teach us about this, would say very volatile thing. So finally, back to where we once were. Check in with your volatility right now. Redirect that energy to nurturing, bringing the water, quenching the fires, bringing the love, supporting the family, whether that's by blood, soul, tribe, however it is. Being careful with your sidism and nationalism and this and such, or a good opportunity to give more energy to that, right? And how about we don't root against a president or anyone, regardless of whether we want. Some people hate this man so much that they would love to see him blunder so much that we have terrible experiences for humans on Earth. If in any way you feel that way, pardon my language, or actually don't fucking check yourself, right? You then are what you hate. So I will finish by also recommending folks go take a peek at some of the hilariously outlandish tests of whether or not Facebook has indeed stopped hiring or paying third-party censors. Like, the funniest one I saw so far was something about Mark Zuckerberg being the first case of a rat penis transplant, right? But I'm looking forward to speaking about topics that literally have been taken down off of those places in the past for me. And I have certainly noticed that as a result, less people are seeing my content. Some of that might be the result of people not wanting to see it because I'm speaking about things that they don't want to talk about or that they've been told are untrue, and maybe they are. I think we should be allowed to speak about not truths. The fuck is truth anyway? So I am, again, kind of just astonished by how people are like, no more censorship, I'm leaving. What? But you do you, and I will try to love and bring the waters anyway. I did want to just share that this morning I was doing some research, trying to find out when perhaps moon occulted, retrograde Cancer Mars out of bounds, and just some math play, knowing that the Mars Sun synodic cycle is 79 years, and knowing that the lunar nodes transit is 18.6 years, because lunar latitude or distance from the ecliptic and where that happens in the zodiac degrees will very much depend upon where the lunar nodes are. So I looked at the 18.6 year cycle. I looked at the 79-year Mars cycle. I said, hey, what is 79 divided by 18.6? And I noticed that it's like 4.247. That's pretty close to 4.25. That means I can multiply that by 4, and I get 17 nodal cycles of 18.6 years equals 316 years-ish. And that 316 divided by the 79-year period of a Mars-Sun synod is 4. So 4 Sun-Mars synods. In other words, 316 years ago. And so I sent a message to historian, Dr. Ann Wolke, who was on last week on Storytelling Hour. If you didn't check it out, go to my Storytelling Hour playlist. GeminiBread.com/YouTube will get you close enough. And I just texted Ann when I was out walking with the dog and the baby earlier, and I said, what pops into your mind when I say the year 1709? And she wrote, funny you should ask. I was just investigating that year because of the Mars retrograde in Cancer and was reading up on the Great Frost, which is one of the things I saw. I also saw something about like the technological development of cast iron Mars. Wars, like when you look at any year on the internet, all you're going to get is atrocities. But there was some great environmental disaster at that time. So anyway, I want to look into that, and I'd invite you to. So 1708 becoming 1709 would be another time when retrograde Mars in Cancer out of bounds was also occulted by the moon, I believe. There is also a not as accurate, but 47-year Sun-Mars period. Look at your 47th solar return chart. You will see Mars close to your natal Mars. You'll see them much closer at the 79th solar return chart, which is also precision from Mercury. But let's look at 47 divided by 18.6. So Sun-Mars divided by the lunar nodes. And we get 2.527. Pretty close to 2.5, so I can multiply by that 2, and I get 5.05 nodes. So 5 nodes of 18.6 years is 93 years. But 2 Sun-Mars 47-year periods would be 94 years. So we say 2025 minus 94, and the answer is 1931. Pluto had just been discovered, Great Depression, right between the world wars, all sorts of shit that were leading to pretty scary shit. Part of my language. There had to be good things then too. But, this is kind of how we are compelled to explore. James, right on 79 being 47 and 32. We could also play with 32. That's not going to play as nicely with 18.6. And now I'm just talking numbers, and people are even more than earlier in this jam. Like, what? But this is how we do. And the beautiful truth of astrology helps us connect to the wheels within wheels within wheels and cosmic cycles. And I think we might be able to lend some energy information, if we explore these times of 1709 and 1931. And maybe there were times more recently of out of bounds Cancer moon occulting retrograde Mars in those zones north of the Tropic of Cancer, where Mars is said to be in fall. I'm not sure, but I will say this: we're finding out now. As I say, F around and find out. And maybe you're just going to find out anyway. So open the heart, give the love, bring the water to the fires. Let us quench that thirst for tribe and support one another. All right. Thanks for spending some time here with me at Storytelling Hour. Again, if you'd like to support the work, first of all, support the work of In the Sky.org, where we found these occultation maps. Okay, there's some cool animations you can find there, and I'm sure there's ways you can plug in and support the work of Cosmic Background. You can buy this beautiful print of this amazing photograph that was created by Andrew McCartney here at Cosmic Background. Support the work of the True Node Ephemeris by simply going there, playing around, and clicking the donate button. Support the work of Stellarium Astronomy Software at stellarium.org. Donate to the collective for this wonderful open source software. Support the work of me, Gemini Brett, which you can do at geminibrett.com. You can sign up for the newsletter. You can click the donate tab here, buy me a cup of tea. You can book an astrology session with me, geminibrett.com/sessions. You can click here to find out about our Constellations community, which is amazing. Come try it out for a month. $16 only, and you will be able to access literally hundreds of hours of classes that have already been recorded exclusively for the Constellations community. We have weekly community discussions, gatherings. It's fun. Come hang out. And also come hang out with the NCGR, San Francisco Bay Area community, on Saturn's Day, January 18th, 2025, where you can hear some presentations regarding specific amazing astrological happenings in the year of 2025, in this year of 2024. If you're into that whole Gregorian trip, simply click at ncgrsanfrancisco.org. Click here and you can register for free. We would love to see you there. You can also register and donate $10 or more if you can't make it live, and we will send you a recording, or you can simply become a member, whether you live here in the Bay or not, of our chapter of NCGR, and register for the talk, and we will send you a recording anyway. Much love to you. Water, water, water. Tenderness, hugs. Spread the love. See you in space, y'all.